Welcome to A Deeper Dive, a podcast that delivers an in-depth study of the truth found in God's Word with Paul Ciotta. Paul brings his creative perspective through the eyes of a theologian, challenging you to live your faith. Now, let's take the plunge. Here's Paul.
There was a time when it seemed everyone was wearing them. In the 1990s, those bracelets emblazoned with the letters WWJD seemed to be on the wrist of every teenager through older person. The embroidered adornments, which were also available in silicone and multiple colors, represented a question. What would Jesus do? It's a question we might ask ourselves in sticky and uncomfortable situations, times when we might be looking for heavenly guidance from the Messiah. Or maybe we want others to know those tough moments come with personal reflection of what the Lord might do. Or maybe it's just a religious fashion statement. Oh, sure, there are those who are still wearing those wristbands under long-sleeved hoodies with a raft of other rubberized armwear. You know, it could be hip, showing a bit of holy undercurrent in our humanistic lives. But asking the question of Jesus' possible response to a situation or issue isn't really a 20th century fad. The origin can be traced to Augustine of Hippo, who coined the doctrine Imitatio Christi, calling us to be imitators of Christ. This is based on the Apostle Paul's call to the Corinthian church. In 1 Corinthians 11:1, he writes, "Follow my example, as I follow the example of Christ." Charles Spurgeon, the Prince of Preachers, used the phrase in a sermon on June 18, 1891, citing 15th century author and cleric Thomas à Kempis. Also, the founder of the Christian Missionary Alliance, A.B. Simpson, wrote the hymn, "What Would Jesus Do?" which was copyrighted in 1891. And Charles Sheldon's 1896 novel, In His Steps, was subtitled, "What Would Jesus Do?" But it wasn't until 1989 when Holland, Michigan youth leader Janie Tinklenberg, inspired by Sheldon's novel, had 300 WWJD wristbands made for her youth group. The challenge question and the wristbands caught on. WWJD, the bands, the marketing, and the contemporary notion of asking the question, what would Jesus do, is now over 35 years old. Over the years, other names have been dropped into the phrase to consider how that person might respond to a situation. While the fad might have faded, we still base a lot of our personal theology around that thinking. But it's potentially different than the original intent of Paul, Spurgeon, Thomas, Simpson, or even Janie, or even Jesus himself. When we ask ourselves, what would Jesus do, we might reflect on that question based on our opinions, our human desire, our past, our experiences, our exposure to learnings and education, and even our church history. We would consider Jesus' response couched in what we or others would do, and assume that's what Jesus would do, although that assessment might counter the very nature of God, His Word, and the character of Jesus. Let me give you some examples. We might think it's okay if I cuss a little or fudge on stuff a little or stretch the truth a little. After all, Jesus understands. But Jesus said, a good man brings good things out of the good stored up in his heart, and the evil man brings evil things out of the evil stored up in his heart. For out of the overflow of his heart, his mouth speaks. That's Luke 6:45. We might think, Jesus would want me to enjoy my worship, so I want to worship the way I want to worship. But Jesus said, Yet a time is coming, and now has come, when the true worshipers will worship the Father in spirit and truth, for they are the kind of worshipers the Father seeks. God is spirit, and his worshipers must worship in spirit and in truth. That's John 4:23 and 24. But what would Jesus do needs to be considered in what Jesus did. And as the second person of the Trinity, he carried the authority and character of God. And that should adjust our thinking. But the temptation is to still make WWJD all about us. So we might think, Jesus wants me to follow my heart. Then Jesus said to his disciples, if anyone would come after me, he must deny himself, take up his cross, and follow me. It's Matthew 16:24. Well, of course, I'm not qualified to share the gospel. Jesus doesn't want me to blow it with others. Come, follow me, Jesus said, and I will make you fishers of men. That's Matthew 4:19. Jesus wants me to enjoy the things of this world. Jesus looked at him, that would be the rich young ruler, and loved him. One thing you lack, he said. Go, sell everything you have and give to the poor, and you will have treasure in heaven. Then, come, follow me. That's Mark 10:21. Well, Jesus would tell me to get my life in order. Another disciple said to him, Lord, let me go and bury my father. But Jesus told him, follow me, and let the dead bury their own dead. Matthew 8:21 and 22. But you get the idea, right? What Jesus really did was to submit to his Father in heaven. And yes, he and the Father are one, as John writes in John 10:30. But to know what Jesus would do is to obey the Father, and he expects us to do the same. John 14:21, whoever has my commands and obeys them, he is the one who loves me. He who loves me will be loved by my Father, and I too will love him and show myself to him. Obedience marked Jesus' life, from his youth to his death and resurrection, and he was honored for that by his Father. Hebrews 5:7 through 9. During the days of Jesus' life on earth, he offered up prayers and petitions with loud cries and tears to the one who could save him from death. And he was heard because of his reverent submission. Although he was a son, he learned obedience from what he suffered, and once made perfect, he became the source of eternal salvation for all who obeyed him. What would Jesus do? He would obey. So how can we obey? By following him. Wristbands optional. Here's some encouragement for you. That piece of 90s religious-like adornment could be a reminder to us to make Jesus-based decisions. But understanding what Jesus would do requires we know what Jesus did and continues to do. He still calls us to follow him in obedience, and that beats any 30-plus-year-old fashion statement.
Thanks for taking a deeper dive with Communicating with Purpose Ministries. Discover more about CWP and how we can encourage your faith journey at www.cwp-now.com. Additionally, listen to Paul's Purposeful Pause podcast for more insights.